The moment I saw that photograph on Instagram, my stomach dropped like I had just missed a step going down a dark staircase. There she was, my bridesmaid Tessa, twirling under cheap fluorescent lights at her office holiday party, wearing the exact dress I had handpicked for my wedding. My wedding, the one I had been planning for over a year, pouring every ounce of my energy, my savings, and my sanity into making perfect. Let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story is not just about a dress. It is about friendship, insecurity, boundaries, and the things we do not say to each other until it is almost too late. I am getting married this summer to the love of my life, Marcus. We have been together for 4 years now, and from the very beginning, I knew he was the one. He is the kind of man who remembers the little things, the way I take my coffee, the fact that I cannot sleep without the fan running even in winter, the name of my childhood dog. Marcus proposed on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. No grand gesture, no flash mob, just the two of us on our apartment balcony watching the storm roll in. He got down on one knee with his grandmother's ring, and I said yes before he even finished the question. Planning a wedding, though, that is a different beast entirely. My family is not wealthy. We are comfortable, sure, but nobody in my family is swimming in cash. My parents helped where they could, my aunts and cousins pitched in, and I made it my personal mission to keep costs as low as humanly possible without making the whole thing look like a backyard barbecue. My cousin Darlene offered up her house just outside Nashville for the bachelorette party. Another cousin had a van big enough for all of us, so we would just split gas money and pile in like a bunch of college kids on spring break. It was going to be perfect. Simple, affordable, and full of love. I told every single one of my bridesmaids the same thing from day one. I sat them down, looked them each in the eye, and said, if anything about this wedding is stressing you out, you come to me. You tell me. I am the only one who should be losing sleep over this. I wanted to be the cool bride, the chill bride, the bride who did not make her friends dread picking up the phone when she called. And for a while, I was doing a pretty good job of it. Then I found the dresses. Oh, these dresses. I was scrolling through Anthropologie's website late one night, Marcus already asleep beside me, and there they were. Cocktail dresses in the most gorgeous shade of dusty rose, inclusive sizing, beautiful cut, and the holy grail of bridesmaid shopping. They were on sale. Marked down significantly. I almost screamed and woke Marcus up. I immediately started texting the group chat. I made a deal with my bridesmaids that I thought was more than fair. I would buy the dresses outright if they each covered their own alterations. Everyone agreed immediately. No arguments, no complaints. I distributed the dresses at our next get-together, and watching each of my girls try them on was one of the happiest moments of the entire wedding planning process. Everyone looked absolutely stunning. My maid of honor, Bridget, actually teared up a little. We were all in this together, and it felt beautiful. Who said planning a wedding was hard, right? Enter Tessa. Now, Tessa and I go way back. We met in college, freshman year, both of us lost and confused during orientation week. She was the one who saved me a seat in our first lecture when I walked in late and panicking. We bonded over shared terrible taste in reality television and a mutual love of Thai food. Over the years, our friendship had its ups and downs, the way any long friendship does, but I always considered her one of my people. So when I saw that photo of her at her company's Christmas party back in December, wearing my bridesmaid dress, I felt something twist inside me. She looked gorgeous, I will give her that. The dress hugged her in all the right places. Her hair was done up. She was laughing at something someone off camera had said. But that dress was supposed to be for my wedding. That was supposed to be the first time anyone saw her in it, standing beside me at the altar while I married the love of my life. I stared at the photo for a long time. I zoomed in. I checked the comments. I told myself I was being ridiculous. None of our mutual friends had been at that party. Nobody from my wedding guest list would have seen her in it. It was a work event, completely separate from our social circle. I bit my tongue so hard I could practically taste blood, and I let it go. I was not going to be that bride. I was not going to let something this small derail everything I had worked to build. But then February came around, and everything changed. Our friend Naomi is also getting married this year, 1 month before my wedding in June. There is a huge overlap between Naomi's guest list and mine. We run in the same circles, share the same friends, attend the same gatherings. When I asked Tessa what she was planning to wear to Naomi's wedding, she said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Oh, I am just going to wear the bridesmaid dress from your wedding. I look hot in it. It is honestly my favorite dress." She said it with a smile, like she expected me to be flattered. Like I should be grateful that she loved the dress I picked out so much that she wanted to wear it everywhere. I felt my chest tighten. I could feel my pulse in my temples. I took a breath, and then another, and then I told her, "I do not want you to wear the bridesmaid dress as a guest to a wedding where half of my wedding guests will be in attendance 1 month before my ceremony. I want the first time our friend group sees that dress to be when you are standing next to me at the altar." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something harder, something defensive. And then she hit me with it. "You told us yourself that you wanted us to have dresses we could wear again. Those were your exact words." I opened my mouth and closed it again. She was right. I had said that. But I meant after the wedding. Obviously after the wedding. Who buys bridesmaid dresses and tells their wedding party to go ahead and wear them everywhere before the big day? It is common sense. Or at least I thought it was. Then she dropped the real bombshell, the one that made my vision go slightly red around the edges. "Actually, I have already worn it to several events." Several events. Not just the Christmas party. Several. My dress. The dress I bought with my own money. The dress that was supposed to represent our friendship and our shared moment on the most important day of my life had apparently been making the rounds at office mixers, dinner parties, and who knows where else. I will be honest with you. I snapped. I am not proud of it. The cool bride, the chill bride, the understanding bride who told everyone not to stress, she left the building. In her place was a woman who had been pushed one step too far. I told Tessa that since I paid for the dress, she was not to wear it again until after my wedding. I did not ask. I told her. My voice was sharp and my words were clipped, and there was no room for negotiation in my tone. She fired right back. She said that since she paid for the alterations, she had invested just as much money into the dress as I had. And the sick part was, with the sale price I had gotten, she might have actually been right about the dollar amounts. The alterations probably cost about the same as what I paid for the dress itself. The argument escalated quickly. She called me a bridezilla. I called her inconsiderate. She said it was just a dress. I said it was my wedding. Back and forth, until we were both too angry to keep talking and we went our separate ways. My other bridesmaids were on my side, every single one of them. Bridget sent me a long text that night telling me I was not overreacting and that Tessa was being thoughtless. My friend Leah said she could not believe Tessa would do something like that. Even my cousin Darlene, who usually stays out of drama, said Tessa was wrong. But Tessa thought I was being completely unreasonable. She thought I was making a mountain out of a molehill, turning a piece of fabric into a federal case. To her, it was just a dress. To me, it was so much more than that. The next few days were tense. Tessa and I did not speak. I would pick up my phone to text her and then put it back down. Marcus tried to be supportive, but I could tell he was walking on eggshells around me. He knew better than to say it is just a dress. Smart man. I spent those days replaying every interaction I had ever had with Tessa, looking for signs I might have missed. Was she always this inconsiderate? Was I always this controlling? Had our friendship always had these fault lines that I just never noticed because the ground had never shaken hard enough to reveal them? And then, on a Wednesday evening, my phone buzzed. It was Tessa. "Can we have dinner tomorrow? I want to talk." She reached out to me, not the other way around. She made the first move. I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes before I responded. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard as I drafted and deleted at least 10 different responses. Finally, I just typed yes and hit send. I barely slept that night. I kept running through scenarios in my head. What if she doubled down? What if she told me she was wearing the dress to Naomi's wedding and there was nothing I could do about it? What if this was the end of our friendship? What if she had already told everyone I was a nightmare bride and turned the whole group against me? Marcus held me close that night and told me it would be okay, no matter what happened. I wanted to believe him. The next evening, I drove to the restaurant. It was this little Italian place we both loved, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in old wine bottles. I hate being late to anything. It is a personal rule of mine. If I am going to judge other people for showing up late, I had better be on time myself. So I arrived 15 minutes early, which I always do. But when I walked in, Tessa was already there. That surprised me. In all the years I had known her, I could count on one hand the number of times she had beaten me somewhere. She was sitting at a corner booth, and she stood up the second she saw me. She walked straight toward me, wrapped her arms around me, and said she was sorry. I started crying immediately, right there in the middle of the restaurant, with the hostess watching and a waiter pausing mid-stride with a tray of pasta. Tessa was crying too. We stood there hugging and sobbing like two fools while the other diners politely pretended not to notice. It was messy and loud and completely us. When we finally sat down and ordered drinks, the words came pouring out of her like water through a broken dam, and suddenly the whole picture became clear in a way it never had been before. Tessa had been struggling. For months, she had been sinking into a quiet depression that none of us had noticed, or maybe that she had been too good at hiding. She told me she felt like she was the only single person in our entire friend group. And when I actually thought about it, she was right. Every single one of our close friends was in a relationship. Bridget had her husband. Leah had been with her boyfriend for 3 years. Darlene was engaged. Even our friend who identified as asexual had a committed partner. And there was Tessa, showing up to every couple's dinner, every engagement party, every wedding shower, alone. She dated. She really did try. But she had standards, and I do not think having standards makes someone picky. I think it makes them smart. She told me about the last 3 guys she had gone out with, and honestly, I could not blame her for cutting any of them loose. The first guy, Nathan, seemed great on paper. He owned his own business. He was good-looking. He was financially stable. But he was not a pet person. Not just indifferent to animals, actively opposed to them being in the house. He told Tessa that if she had a dog, it should live outside in a doghouse. Absolutely not on the furniture. Not in the bed. Not even in the living room. Now, Tessa's dog, a goofy golden retriever named Biscuit, is her entire world. That dog sleeps on her pillow. The relationship was dead on arrival. The second guy, Derek, could not stop talking about his ex-wife. Not in a wistful, I miss her way. In a bitter, venomous, she ruined my life way. They went to the movies, and he brought up how his ex used to say she loved movies, but was actually sneaking off to see some other man. They went on a hike, and Tessa put her hair in a ponytail. Derek told her she looked cute, then immediately launched into a monologue about how his ex always wore ponytails except when she was meeting her affair partner, when she would wear her hair down to look special for him. Every single conversation, no matter the topic, somehow circled back to his ex-wife's infidelity. Tessa said it felt like dating 3 people, him, her, and the ghost of his failed marriage. She ended it after the 3rd date. The third guy, Paul, was perfectly nice except for one thing. He was aggressively into bathroom humor. I am talking constant, relentless, juvenile jokes about bodily functions. At dinner, during movies, while meeting her friends. Tessa just could not do it. She said she needed a partner she could take seriously at least some of the time. I have to say, my own fiancé loves a good joke like that, and I find it charming, but I understood why it was a deal breaker for her. So there she was, 0 for 3 on the dating front, watching all of her friends plan weddings and buy houses and build lives with their partners, while she went home to her apartment alone every night. And then I come along, talking about my wedding nonstop. Dress shopping and flower arrangements and seating charts and venue tours and bachelorette party plans. I never once stopped to ask her how she was really doing. She did not blame me for that. She made that very clear. But she admitted that being constantly surrounded by wedding talk when she was already feeling low was like salt in a wound she did not even realize she had. Then she told me about the dress. When she picked it up from the seamstress after the alterations, she tried it on at home just to check the fit. And she looked in the mirror and felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt pretty. Not just okay, not just presentable, but genuinely, radiantly beautiful. She said she stood in front of that mirror for 10 minutes, turning side to side, and for the first time in months, she actually liked what she saw. When her company's holiday party came around, she had procrastinated finding an outfit. She went shopping and nothing looked right. Nothing made her feel the way that dress had made her feel. She went to Anthropologie, the same store the dress came from, and nothing in the store measured up. She knew it was wrong. She told me she stood in her closet that night, holding the dress, having an actual argument with herself about whether or not to wear it. In the end, the part of her that needed to feel beautiful won. And the night was magical for her. She walked into that party and people noticed. Her co-workers complimented her all evening. Her work crush, a guy she had been silently admiring from across the office for months, actually sought her out. They danced together. They talked for hours. The women at her table told her she looked incredible and asked where she got the dress. For one night, she was not the single friend or the lonely girl going home alone. She was the woman in the stunning dress that everyone wanted to talk to. Even better, she hit it off with a colleague named Mira from a completely different department. They had never really spoken before that night, but something clicked between them. Since the party, they had become genuine friends, going to dinner, watching shows together, letting their dogs have playdates. Tessa said Mira had become one of the best parts of her social life, and it all started because of that dress. She even felt like management had taken notice of her. Since the party, she had been put on bigger, more visible projects. Whether it was actually because of the dress or because of the confidence it gave her, something had shifted at work. The dress had become a talisman for her. It was not just fabric and stitching. It was the thing that had pulled her out of a dark place and reminded her that she was worth seeing. So when we were hanging out last weekend and I was going on and on about my wedding, and then brought up what to wear to Naomi's wedding, that old familiar darkness crept back in. She said what she said about wearing the bridesmaid dress partly as a joke, partly as a reflex, partly because some self-destructive part of her wanted to poke at the wound. But then my reaction, which I will now fully admit was not my finest moment, set something off in her. I did not ask her not to wear it. I told her. I used my I paid for it voice, the one that sounds less like a friend making a request and more like a parent laying down the law. She said I made her feel like a child being scolded, like she had no autonomy, like the dress and everything it represented belonged to me and she was just borrowing it. So she dug in. She said she had worn it to multiple events, even though she had not. That was a lie designed to hurt me, and it worked perfectly. In reality, she had worn it exactly once, to the Christmas party, and then had it dry cleaned and hung it back in her closet where it had stayed ever since. Sitting across from her in that restaurant, hearing all of this, I felt something shift inside me. The anger I had been carrying around for days just evaporated. In its place was something softer, something that hurt in a different way. I had been so wrapped up in my own wedding, my own plans, my own vision of how everything should look, that I had missed what was happening right in front of me. My friend was drowning, and I was too busy picking out centerpieces to notice. I apologized too. I told her I was sorry for the way I reacted, for the controlling tone, for making her feel small. I told her I should have asked instead of demanded. I told her I should have been paying more attention. We were both crying again by this point, but this time it felt cleansing instead of painful. She is not wearing the dress to Naomi's wedding. She said she never really intended to, deep down. It was the principle of the fight that kept her going, not the actual desire to show up in a bridesmaid dress as a wedding guest. I even told her about posting the whole story online, about asking strangers for their opinions. She thought it was hilarious. She laughed so hard, she almost choked on her cocktail. She said she knew I must have been really upset because of the fake name I gave her. Apparently, we have this whole inside joke about names from a cartoon we both loved as kids, and the name I chose was from the wrong faction, which told her everything she needed to know about my emotional state at the time. She actually read through some of the responses, and she agreed that the people who said we were both a little bit wrong were probably the most accurate. We were both being stubborn. We were both letting our own insecurities drive the bus instead of just being honest with each other. We stayed at that restaurant for 3 more hours. We talked about everything, not just the dress, but about her depression, about my tendency to steamroll conversations with wedding talk, about how we could both be better friends to each other. We talked about Mira and the word crush. We talked about Biscuit and whether golden retrievers are objectively the best dogs. She asked about Marcus and whether he was still leaving his socks everywhere. He is. By the time we left, my face hurt from smiling and my eyes were swollen from crying, and I had consumed an irresponsible number of cocktails during happy hour. But I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Walking to my car that night, with the warm evening air on my face and my phone full of new photos of us making ridiculous faces at our table, I thought about what this whole experience had taught me. Weddings have a way of magnifying everything. Every small annoyance becomes a catastrophe. Every minor disagreement becomes a betrayal. Every piece of fabric becomes a symbol of something much larger than itself. But at the end of the day, the wedding is one day. The friendships you carry into it and out of it, those are what matter. I almost lost one of my closest friends over a dress. Not because the dress was the real problem, but because neither of us was brave enough to say what was actually going on underneath. Tessa was lonely and struggling and too proud to ask for help. I was stressed and controlling and too focused on perfection to see that someone I loved was hurting. We were both protecting ourselves in ways that ended up hurting each other. I am glad she reached out. I am glad we had that dinner. I am glad we cried in a restaurant full of strangers and probably made at least 3 tables deeply uncomfortable. Because now I know something I did not know before. My friend needs me to show up for her the way she has always shown up for me. Not just as a bridesmaid in a dusty rose dress, but as a person who checks in, who listens, who notices when the light behind someone's eyes has gone a little dim. Marcus was waiting up for me when I got home. He was on the couch with our dog, watching some terrible action movie, and he paused at the second I walked in. I told him everything, and he just smiled and said he was glad it worked out. Then he asked if I was hungry because he had saved me a plate. That is when I started crying again, but this time it was because I was overwhelmed by how lucky I am. Lucky to have a partner who saves me dinner. Lucky to have friends who are willing to fight with me and then fight to make it right. Lucky to have a wedding to plan, even when the planning makes me temporarily lose my mind. The wedding is still on track. The dresses are still perfect. Tessa will be standing right beside me at the altar, looking stunning in dusty rose, and it will be the first time our friend group sees her in that dress. Well, the first time that counts, anyway. If you are planning a wedding right now, or if you are in a wedding, or if you just have a friend who seems a little off lately, take this as your sign. Ask them how they are doing. Not the surface level "how are you" that we throw around like confetti, but the real question. The one that means I see you and I care about the answer. You might be surprised by what they tell you. And if you are the friend who is struggling, it is okay to say so. It is okay to admit that you are lonely or sad or feeling left behind. The people who love you want to know. They cannot help if they do not know. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not put on a dress and pretend everything is fine. Sometimes the bravest thing is taking it off, hanging it back in the closet, and telling someone the truth. We were both wrong. We were both right. We were both human beings doing our messy, imperfect best. And at the end of the day, we still have each other. That is the only thing that really matters. So here I am, a bride with swollen eyes and a full heart, still a little tipsy from happy hour, rambling to anyone who will listen. My wedding is going to be beautiful. My bridesmaids are going to be stunning. And somewhere in Nashville, my cousin's house is waiting for the most chaotic, wonderful bachelorette party a group of broke, loud, emotional women has ever thrown. I cannot wait. You know, there is something else I want to share with you before I wrap this up. Something I have been thinking about ever since that dinner with Tessa. When I first started planning this wedding, I had this picture in my head of exactly how everything would go. The venue would be just right. The flowers would be fresh and fragrant. The music would be perfect. Every detail, down to the napkin folds, would be exactly as I imagined. And standing beside me would be my bridesmaids, all of them in matching dresses that nobody had ever seen before, creating this perfect, Instagram-worthy moment. But life is not Instagram. Life is messy and complicated and full of surprises. And the truth is, the most beautiful moment of my wedding planning journey so far was not finding the perfect dress or booking the perfect venue. It was sitting in a restaurant with mascara running down both of our faces, finally being honest with each other for the first time in months. That is the thing about planning a wedding that nobody tells you. It is not really about the wedding at all. It is about the relationships. It is about who shows up for you, and more importantly, who you show up for. It is about being brave enough to have the hard conversations and humble enough to admit when you have been wrong. I think about Tessa standing in front of her mirror, turning side to side in that dusty rose dress, feeling beautiful for the first time in months. And my heart aches for her, not because she wore the dress, not because she broke some unwritten rule of bridesmaid etiquette, but because she was hurting and none of us knew. She was putting on a brave face at every brunch, every group dinner, every wedding-related event, and behind that smile was a woman who felt invisible. The dress made her visible. That is all it ever was. A piece of fabric that reminded her she existed, that she mattered, that she was worth noticing. And I almost took that away from her because I was so focused on my own big day that I forgot the people in it are more important than the decorations around it. Marcus says I have a tendency to get tunnel vision when I am passionate about something. He says it with love, but he is right. When I am locked onto a goal, everything else becomes background noise. And somewhere along the way, Tessa became background noise in my life. That is not the kind of friend I want to be. That is not the kind of bride I want to be. So we made a pact that night at dinner. Every week, no matter how busy wedding planning gets, Tessa and I are going to have a non-wedding conversation. Just the two of us, talking about anything and everything except seating charts and cake flavors. We are going to check in on each other, really check in, and we are going to be honest even when it is uncomfortable. She also told me she is going to start seeing a therapist, not because of the dress drama, but because she realized that night that she had been carrying around a heaviness she could not shake on her own. I told her I was proud of her for that. It takes guts to ask for help, and I wish more people understood that. As for the dress, it is hanging in her closet, freshly dry cleaned and waiting for its big debut. She promised me she will not wear it again until after the wedding. And I believe her, not because I threatened her or guilt her or pulled rank as the bride, but because she understands now why it matters to me, and I understand now what it meant to her. And when two people really understand each other, compromise stops feeling like sacrifice. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Relationships are messy, weddings are stressful, and sometimes the things that feel like the biggest deal in the moment turn out to be the doorway to something deeper and more meaningful than you ever expected. Subscribe for more stories like this one. And remember, be kind to your friends. You never know what someone is carrying beneath the surface. Subscribe for more stories.